The pages that follow are letters I found amongst my grandfather's things after he died. I'm not entirely sure why he kept them. Based on the names and dates, I believe they belonged to his father. He didn't leave this world with much else besides personal mementos, but that's beside the point. I'm transcribing these letters now in an attempt to wrap my head around them. There's something about these letters, more than just their contents, that's odd and unsettling. I can't seem to shake it. I'm sorry, I won't waste any more of your time. And here are the letters. April 13th, 1913. Dear Benjamin, it's been far too long, my old friend. Last we spoke was your wedding, was it not? How are you and Lydia coming along anyway? Staying young enough for the rest of us, I hope. Any little ones on the way, or already have your hands full enough already? I do hope you're keeping busy. Idle hands, as they say. I've been having my own trouble on that matter. I've recently been let go, and finding steady work has been difficult for me. I don't mean to bore you, but hopefully it will all be behind me soon enough. My cousin Marty has recently written to me about something he claims to be very important. A possible business opportunity, it seems like. Do you remember Marty? I'm certain he was there with us the night you and Lydia first met. Although I suppose the rest of us were the last thing on your mind that night. All Marty wrote in his letter was that his work is of the utmost importance, and he needed to speak to someone he knew he could trust. It feels a bit odd, I suppose. I never really felt he and I were especially that close. He was always very withdrawn and shy. Perhaps I really was the closest connection he ever had. I'm amazed he never made any lasting friends while he was off in college, or met a nice girl for that matter. His parents were always well off, and had high expectations for him. I must admit, I was always a bit envious of the attention his mind commanded from our family. I'm actually about to go visit him after I finish writing this letter. The whole thing has my stomach up in knots of various emotions. Writing things out has always helped me quell those feelings. I hope you don't mind my rambling. I have truly missed you, and regret not writing sooner. Give Lydia my best. I hope to hear from you soon, old friend. Sincerely yours, Alistair. April 15th, 1913. Dear Benjamin, I regret to inform that Marty was clearly not well. I shall recall as best I can more than for my own sake, and I do apologize to trouble you with the knowledge. From the moment he first answered the door, I heard at least a dozen locks unlatch before I saw his face. And when I did, my God, I was aghast. His skin was pale and covered in sores. His eyes were sunken and dim. He seemed unfit to even gaze upon the weak evening light. His normally tousled hair seemed even more out of place and patchy, small tufts clearly missing. Having carefully herded me past the stacks of newspapers and trash, it became apparent he had not left in months. The smell, Benjamin, the unholy smell of his once beautiful apartment alone nearly did me in. I couldn't tell what was supposed to be fermenting and what wasn't. Chemical fumes rolled gently down from his study and briefly masked the less powerful odors. The unnatural burn and sting they brought to my throat forced several coughs until I covered my mouth. I tried to keep a stiff upper lip and hear him out. A brilliant mind willing to reach out to me and only me for assistance could mean great things. On his parents' inheritance alone, I could serve as a handsome errand boy, maybe even a true assistant to him. High hopes, I know. When I saw his study, my hopes fell drastically. It was clear he had formed an addiction of some kind, if not multiple. I suppose the stress the family instilled in him had finally become too much. His study was such a mess of papers, books, and empty bottles and vials of various repute. I nearly broke my neck tripping over them. It made the entryway look clean and organized by comparison. There wasn't much he told me. Again, mostly that what he was doing could change the world, and he had to be sure I could be trusted. He spent most of my time there asking me questions about our past and sipping nervously from one of his small discolored vials. Throughout his questions, I had begun to steady myself. An addict he might have become, but if what he was working on was half as important as he made it sound, I would be happy to be there from the beginning of it in any way I could. He ended by abruptly standing up and telling me to return in a fortnight minus the day of my birth. Benjamin, You and Marty both know I was born on the 20th of July. I know he is far more learned than I, but by my math, that would mean he wants me to arrive 6 days ago? Do you have any idea what he might have meant? I will think more on it, and if I can't find a better answer, a fortnight alone it shall be. I will see this through to the end, and I will keep you informed all the way as well. If not for the sake of your curiosity, then for my own sanity, as I fear that if I don't share these odd occurrences with someone, the madness of the very situation will take root and fester within my mind. Sincerely yours, Alistair. April 28th, 1913. Benjamin, I apologize for the lack of pleasantries in this letter, but I must write down as much as I can while it's still fresh in my mind. I haven't slept this past night, despite my efforts. Writing this all down will be my last hope for even a moment's rest. I waited the fortnight and returned to Marty. He seemed displeased with me, but assured that if I were myself, I had acted as he had expected me to. He even seemed upset to know I had been sharing the information with someone, yet again was wholly unconcerned as he expressed confidence that I lacked the ability to properly understand, much less convey the things he was trying to tell me. How could he know I've been writing to you if he's been locked up for months? Surely he can't have any connections within the post. I'm certain I'm the only living person he's spoken to in months. Marty rambled on emphatically for over an hour over what he began to call a secret world hidden in front of all of us. He corrected himself at least a dozen times, seemingly unable to recant the exact nature of what he was trying to find or explain. The parts he repeated the most still stick in my head, though. A secret world, some profane truth, linking everything together. It seemed as though he was talking about a place and a time and a thing all at once, like it were constantly changing and he was chasing after it with his words to properly define it. After this ordeal, I was sure he had intoxicated himself in some way or another. I tried to speak reasonably with him, to see if I could pull him out of it, bring him back down to us. I asked him how he knew all of this, if he had seen any of it for himself. He became both visibly upset and happily smug, as if expecting to be met with doubt. He explained how he had stumbled upon a vision of truth in his dreams, and it were as if he were looking at it through a veil that clouded the closer he looked. He seemed proud to announce that this was his great expedition of the mind, to find a way to pierce that veil. He presented a small vial from the inside of his stained coat pocket, alongside a well-used hypodermic needle. The green viscous liquid within the vial swirled as he held it. I tell you, I swear I saw dark wisps of smoky shadow writhing and stirring up the liquid from the inside. This was his drug, his obsession he had somehow latched this grand hallucination onto. He seemed to see my thoughts and retorted with a sharp snort of disapproval that some might call it a haphazard mixture of substances with unsavory origins. He said those with such claims would be morons, that his precious tincture was not designed to be an overpowering amalgam of hallucinations. So I asked him, as calmly as I could, what he would call it. He claimed it was meant to be a precise distillation of very specific chemicals, both natural and synthesized, with very specific triggers to the brain. He claimed it had taken a very long time to properly test, and various kinds of hangovers to get it to where it was. I know his degree was in chemistry, but something about this still didn't feel right. It made my stomach turn and tighten. Again, I tried to reason with him. I asked him how he would ever know when it was right, when it would be finished. I implored him to look around him and see how much of himself he had lost into this Eldritch tincture, into his pursuit of this profane truth. He fingered, tapped, and rolled his fingers anxiously and carefully around the small vial before he said in the most hollow and flat voice I've ever heard him speak in, "Sometimes you just know." I wondered how many times he had told himself that very same notion before sending himself into a stupor of blackout slovenly gibbering, and how many more times he would before he finally didn't wake up from it. But it was the conviction in his voice that cut to my bones. I was afraid, Ben. I have no shame in writing those words. I was afraid for him, that I would see another loved one lose themselves to drink or addiction in this cruel world. I was afraid of how much he believed in his obsession of this profane truth and what it might ultimately do to him. I was afraid he was beyond help, that even if I were to have him committed right here and now, it would only embolden his resolve and no doubt drive him to an even quicker grave. But most of all, I was afraid it was true. I know everything he said, everything I've written sounds like just what it is. The ramblings of a lunatic, drunkard, and addict. But as hard as I've tried to explain it, to convey it, to rationalize it, it was in his voice. How he spoke. You had to hear him, Ben. The unfamiliar tone and timbre of his usually meek voice was compelled and deeply assured. Part of me wanted to believe in this profane truth he spoke of, and I don't know why. I don't know what to do, Ben. Sincerely yours, Alistair. May 17th, 1913. Ben, it makes sense now. It all makes sense. I wish I could describe it all to you, but it would be impossible. But impossibilities make for the most spectacular possibilities. I can see beyond more than there is. It's as if I'm reading the world in front of me as if it were a book. There's so much more, so very much more than the words I'm able to write and thoughts I'm able to catch hold of. There's more. Everything holds a secret. Even the veins twisting inside my arms and the blood flowing within them. And they'll teach me. They'll show me their secrets. What better place to start? Carefully. A steady hand, and just a little deeper. Moderation. Discipline. Others would fail because they lack it. I'm different. I can come back from it. I can return and record what I find. It's all I have ever done. All I ever have been meant for. Can you see it? Here, the words in the letter devolve into illegible scribbles and smears of old, rusty blood. The last words below were a barely legible combination of ink and blood, haphazardly smeared together. Await my next letter.